This is part 3 of the Stuart major beam engine rebuild, and it's dismantling the crankshaft and removing the engine from the hideous box that it's sat on. This engine's quite badly oil stained, but that's not a problem at all because before painting the engine the oil will be removed by the normal method. The first part to go is the governor assembly. I've removed the linkages from the steam chest first, so it's just 2 nuts off 2 studs and it pulls away from the engine. Next I'm removing the valve gear, starting with the eccentric rod. This is a very simple job, so I won't go into any detail about it. In this clip I'm undoing the nuts that hold one side of the main bearing down to the baseboard. The main bearing at the other side is held properly down to the engine bed plate. So what I'll be doing is removing the cap of the other bearing and then lifting the entire assembly, crankshaft, flywheels and pulley clear of the engine completely. Here you see me pressing out the old bolts with a screwdriver point, and now over to the other side to remove the top cap. As I get further into this engine, I can still see that it's very well made. So I do come to the conclusion we either have 2 builders here, we have a guy who built the engine initially and someone else who fitted it all together, or the guy who built the engine was a very good engineer and not too good a fitter. I'll never know, of course, because nobody's going to come forward and say, I was that fitter, I built it and I made a really bad job of it. It's a little bit like ugly people. Even in these days of extreme political correctness, you can make jokes about ugly people, because nobody's going to come up and complain and say, I'm offended by that because I'm ugly. Temporarily, I'm replacing the bearing cap so I don't lose it, and for those of you who are very eagle-eyed, you will have noticed, of course, that I have reversed the top cap. It's the wrong way round. I just wanted to see how it fitted. Anyway, on now to the crankshaft. The first thing to do is to put the micrometer on this crankshaft and check it for wear. And the good news is it's not worn, but the entire crankshaft is 1 thou under 3/4 of an inch. For a crankshaft I would always use silver steel, because generally it is ground to exactly the size you're buying. On the other hand, bright mild steel, or BMS as it's abbreviated to, is often slightly undersize. In this case, this is definitely 1 thou under spec. So I will be doing some more tests on the crankshaft and the flywheel and the pulley to see where the slop's coming from. It's probably coming from this baseboard, it's a terrible thing. I'll put that on the floor for the minute and temporarily put the engine on its side because underneath the engine there is a copper pipe sticking out. If you look at it you'll see the copper pipe. It's from the water pump. So all I'm going to do is remove the water pump and I'm going to remove this brass piece with the neat soldering on it. That, by the way, was an attempt at sarcasm. The soldering on the brass part is pretty grim, really, but the pump's quite nicely made, which once again makes me think that this particular builder liked making the parts but didn't much like fitting them together. If you look at this brass component, you can see that the parts have been shaped, probably beaten round a former, and then soldered together in an appalling fashion, and it's only soft solder. It's really not difficult to get it neat. But just look at this, it's diabolical. This soldering is underneath the engine and fairly invisible, but that's not the point. It makes very little sense to me how someone can set about making an engine of this calibre, where the castings alone cost over £1,000, and do a job on the engine like this. I'll remove this and I'll clean it up later. So now that there's no longer anything protruding underneath the engine, I can sit it flat on the bench and have a good look at it. There's some dodgy grinding on the bed plate just below this bearing. But the worst part is not on the bench, the worst part is now on the floor. Look at this. All I can say really is that once upon a time there was an ugly Englishman, an ugly Scotsman and an ugly Irishman went into a pub. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful.